Well, welcome to a very cold, bright, low and clear River Trent. And really the idea of this shoot was to try to give you an idea of the sort of things you need to do through the winter when it gets to scratching time. I was kind of hoping, if I'm honest, to come down here and for the conditions to be perfect and to sort of almost have a little bit of editorial license. But like I said, it is bright, it is high pressure, it is cold, the river is low and clear, and so it is actually genuinely scratching time. And so we're here for a day. I'm going to try and give you an idea of how I tackle daytime barbel fishing when it is very, very difficult, and I think today is going to be very, very difficult. They're going to suss the rig, they're going to know the rig's going out there, they're going to hear you. There's quite a lot of pressure on the River Trent these days, let's be honest. And so I think you have to be a little bit craftier than the next guy. And so today I'm going to talk you through everything that I do, because I'm no different to most people. I book a couple of days out in the diary, a couple of weeks ahead, and regardless of conditions, yes, I'd love to come down here when it's up, raging, and you can just stick a big lump of meat on and it goes around every single cast. But most of the time through the winter, if you want to catch a winter barbel, you're going to be faced with some really high pressure conditions, some low clear river conditions. And I've had reasonable success in the last couple of years coming up here on the River Trent in those conditions. So just to give you a quick idea of what you're going to be seeing later on, that is going out there. I'm all clipped up. It's took me a little while to get ready, if I'm honest, because I wasn't fully prepared for this trip. So first cast, wish me luck. First cast, nice big thump, hit the clip hard, straighten the rig out, feel it down, bosh. Right, well, we've been fishing a couple of hours now, probably 3 hours if I'm absolutely honest, and it's getting colder and colder and colder. It looks quite bright, doesn't it? And I'm hoping the sun warms me up at some point, but it isn't, and my hands are doing this, so it's getting really difficult to fish these slightly finer hooks and get these maggots on them. But it's a perfect time to talk you through what we're actually doing and why we're doing it. The reason we're fishing this stretch of river is because, to all intents and purposes, it's quite barren. It's a pretty long straight, but just upstream of me and just downstream of me, it shallows up. So not only have we got a little bit of cover on the far side, which isn't being fished. So on these rivers, potentially when you've got no fishing on the other bank, for me, the fish don't move left and right when there's angling pressure. They go over to the far bank. And so we've got a hidey hole for them to live over on the far bank with some decent depth underneath the trees and the bushes. But most importantly, we've just got a very slight depression for probably, I don't know, 50, 60 meters. And I'm not local to the Trent, but I have fished this sort of area a few times, and I've leaded about a bit to know where the deeper areas are. Homework in the summer pays dividends in the winter quite often. But the serious part is what we're actually fishing and how we are going to try and catch these barbel, because as much as the intro made it look like it was low, clear and cold, it is very low on more inspection. It is very cold, and these are the worst conditions that I've pretty much ever filmed in for barbel. So it is definitely scratching time. I've come down here with a 2 1/4 tip in my trilogy barbel rods, well, trilogy rods. I use them for almost everything: tench fishing, bream fishing, chub fishing, certainly barbel fishing. They don't feel super powerful when you pick them up, but boy, can you lob 6 ounces as far as you need to. And under the rod tip, if you are fishing slightly smaller hooks like we are today, they've got a beautiful battle curve. So I've just started using them more and more and more, and like them more and more and more, and they literally stay in the back of my van pretty much all the time. 12-pound barbel line. I've got the Zealous distance reels. That makes casting, I mean, we're fishing at 48 yards, so 12 wraps today. It's not an awful long way out, but when you are cranking 6 ounce leads in all the time, the extra size handle, the extra size spool, just the extra cranking power makes the job of fishing at that range with heavier gear much more easy. Plus, it's my new bit of kit, and they are super smooth and they do look very sexy. Down to a quick change safety leg clip, which is one of our new additions. I absolutely love these. A gripper lead. And with that mesh, what I've done on the inside is I've just chopped a couple of the little hexagons out at the bottom to allow me, I know this doesn't look very neat, you can chop that off if you want, but quite frankly, it doesn't affect the aerodynamicness of the rig, and it melts pretty quickly anyway. Just allows me to feed that PVA mesh through so I can tie it onto the bottom of the gripper lead. Now, one of the reasons why I'm not fishing a maggot feeder and I am fishing maggot bags is a couple of reasons really. One, when you're trying to get a feeding response from barbel that don't want to feed, in my mind, trickling maggots in ain't the one. What I want is a really nice conveyor belt with a couple of pints of maggots down there. And to empty a couple of pints of maggots through the day via a maggot feeder is almost impossible unless you're chucking every 5 or 10 minutes. And what I don't want to do is chuck every 5 or 10 minutes on this in this swim today. I think disturbance is going to be a big thing. And so what I want to do is I want to put a really nice size bag of maggots out, tied to the bottom of the gripper lead, so that I've got a really nice parcel of bait. I can get a volume of bait out there on the bottom, on the same line. I'm clipping up every single time, 12 wraps. So every time I'm fishing to a skyline marker and I'm hitting a clip, so it's super accurate. But most importantly, I can leave that out there for an hour and I know I've got a decent volume of bait out there. And I know some of you are thinking, oh, in a river, that might melt and roll downstream. Well, I'm not so sure it works like that in steady paced water. And that's the most important thing here. I'm fishing steady paced water. As long as it gets to the bottom, I think this melts first. But even if it doesn't, my bottom rod is fished 2 rod lengths below me, or below this rod, I should say, on the same clip. So I'm fishing the conveyor belt with maggots. I've got my feeder, or I've got my feed rod at the top, and I've got my bottom rod, which is just basically fished on a tiny little small PVA bag, tiny little pellets, maybe a 50p size. I really don't want too much there, on the same line, just in case those maggots do end up sort of sprinkling a little bit further downstream than what works in my mind. Quite a long hook link, and I am fishing quite a funky rig for me on the River Trent, because if you've seen any of my videos before, generally I'll use like an 032 fluoro or an 032 mono straight through, and that's absolutely fine if you're fishing a relatively big size bait and a relatively big hook, a 10 or an 8, and in coloured water that's what I would do, and I really wouldn't bother with a combi rig. But where I'm fishing small baits and small hooks, if you get like an 032 diameter hook link to a size 12 hook, it really closes the gape up, and that makes, in my mind, the hooking efficiency of the rig really poor. So I've got about 4 foot of fluorocarbon to a small swivel there, and on the end of the small swivel, loop to loop, is about 4-5 inches of supple braid. I think it's our 15 pound, I'm sure it's our 15 pound braid, to a size 12 power hook. Now it's a nice fine it's a nice fine wired hook, but even for a small size 12, it's got a really nice wide gape, which, let's be honest, even though we're fishing super small baits here, there is still a chance that it roars off with a 15 or a 16 pounder. So I'll still want a small hook because I'm fishing super small baits, 2 maggots, and probably an 8mm piece of boilie, but I want a nice wide gape just in case we do hook a few big fish, because I think a wider gape on big rubbery lips gives you a better hook hold. And that's it. PVA bags and maggots, 2 rods clipped up on exactly the same distance, about 2 rod lengths apart. Don't cast too often, because I generally think that the combination of fishing for fish that probably don't want to feed and smashing a feeder in all the time probably isn't the way to go. And every hour, on the hour, I'm tying up a new bag of maggots and I'm lobbing it out there. I should say this, at the start of the day, I put 3 bags in, like really quickly, just to get a little bit of bait down right from the start, maybe about half a pint. But that's it. That is the way I tackle scratching time through the winter to try and nick a barbel or 2. Well, how's your luck? We persevered, we didn't change anything. And I genuinely felt like if we was going to grab a bite in these horrendous conditions through the sunny day, then the maggot was our best shot. And it turns out that I still think, even though we didn't get a bite, didn't see a sign of a fish to be fair, I still think the maggot was our best shot. However, the other thing that this time of year, when it is so bright and so low and clear, is that quite often these barbel just don't feed until the witching hour. And literally the sun has just half dropped behind the trees. We've had a little baby about 3 pound, and then we've had this brute. A proper Trent stunner, kept us waiting all day. And I was sitting there thinking, why have I gone and spent 20 quid on maggots when I could have done the same with a big lump of luncheon meat, which clearly, you know, would be a decent bait after dark. But I think if we stayed, we've got to be off this stretch. It's only days. But I think if we stayed into dark for a couple of hours, we'd have a few fish. But 2 bites right on dusk. Justification that we did it right, because in these small windows, when they do turn on, you've got to make sure your hook bait is in the right place. And our hook bait has been over the bait all day long. So when these two did decide to turn on, we got both the bites. Rods are wrapped up now. I'm going to slip this one back, but it's been a hell of a tough day. And there's me going, yep, you definitely get bites if you do this on the maggot. Some days it just don't feed. But most evenings they do. What a belter. Right, this is going over there. We need to go with it. There's a big snag there. Well, I'm really nervous. I'm really nervous because I've spoke to a few people and there's just no bites during the day. And from yesterday's result, fishing the maggot, like if there were bites, we definitely would have had them, but come back today and I actually said to the cameraman Ty, I said the one thing in our favour today, it's still freezing cold. I mean, I think it's colder today than it was yesterday, but the cloud cover, and I've been here several times before, and just a bit of cloud cover has made a huge difference. And today the reason, well, anyway, I made a phone call to the wife and asked her if I could have another day up here. But the only reason we decided to have another go is because yesterday evening, having 2 bites, literally just as the sun pokes its head down behind the trees, proved that there were fish in the swim. I know we was fishing well yesterday, super accurate, super, like everything was right, but just felt like, because it was one of those really horrible freezing cold bright days in these river conditions, everything was against us, and with this cloud cover, I just felt like we had not a much better chance, but a better chance. And oh, why is that just gone solid? What is down there? What is down there? Oh, that's just gone solid. Why is that? Oh, tiny little size 12 on. Oh, I can see it in the clear water, right on the ledge. Oh, it's so clear. It's really deep down there on that ledge, and I can see it. That's how clear the water is. It's ridiculous. Come on. Oh, great bite. It's not a monster. It's not a big one at all. There's a big lump of weed, just dying weed right on the edge of that ledge. In you come. Come on. Lead now, they're fit. Lead now, they're fit. Come on. You think you're a double, but you're not. But you, whatever you are, you're mine. Oh, that is a right result. That is a right result. I was literally just sat there on my phone. And luckily enough, because I knew I was going to leave the rods out a little bit longer today. The one thing that I'm doing different today is that I'm going to leave the rods out longer and leave the try and get the disturbance down to a minimum. I actually, I don't normally set my drags because I'm always watching my tips. But I thought if I'm going to leave them rods out a little bit longer, I'll set the drags and they'll just have a bit of a chill. When I was actually smashing YouTube. I should have been watching How to Catch Barbel, but then the rod just hooped over and started going, so yeah. Small things, when it's really, really, really tough like this, small things make a massive difference. Clipping up, hitting the same spot, fishing to the same skyline horizon marker, making sure that there's not a dozen piles of bait when these small windows happen. Right, anyway, waffling. Hopefully this is the first of a couple. I'm not going to say many because I genuinely don't think there's many bites on the Trent, certainly during the daylight hours at the moment. Not a Trent monster, but when it's hard, low and clear, as I've said many times on this shoot, every single one counts. And I'll tell you what, as much as it's easy to catch them, or easier to catch them when it's up and chocolate and raging, I do like winkling them out when it's tough, because when it's low and clear, the colours become very, very vibrant. This one's got some really cool markings around its gill plates, and it's even got like a dark chin where it rumbles around on the bottom. So yeah, same tactics as yesterday. The only difference I've done is that I'm fishing bags on both rods, as opposed to just fishing a bag on the top rod. I'm fishing bags on both rods now to try and double my chances. But whether that's made a difference or not, I don't know. I think, because it's still the same or similar temperature, I think the difference is the cloud cover, personally. But I'm not complaining either way. I don't mind if it's hard. Couple more bites. We know they're here because we had a couple in a really short space of time yesterday evening, just into dusk. And so we've had one relatively early today. So you've got to be thinking that there's another bite or two left in the swim. Beautiful. I'm buzzing, as you can probably tell. I know it's been done to death, but before you let them go, just make sure they power off like that. That one really didn't take too long. Sometimes it can take a little bit longer, but when they fight that hard, they can be fragile. So just don't ever rush putting them back. Right folks, there's a couple of things I want to talk about. One, I'm going to show you how I tie my bags up, and it's not revolutionary, but there will be questions, so I'm just going to do it whilst we're here. And two, hook bait size. Now I briefly mentioned it when we talked about rigs, and as a general rule of thumb, I'm just using like a, what size are these? Like a 12 to 14 mil dumbbell, okay? And when the water's relatively coloured or they're feeding, normally you just whack that on and it suffice. And even if you get a little bit finicky and you have to chop it in half, that's a relatively small bait. And I think when it gets a little bit tougher, that's absolutely fine. But when you're fishing bags or feeders and you're putting maggots and small pellets and crumb boilies, because I'm putting the odd sort of isofish crumb boilie into the bag. I'm not just putting maggots in now. I've got some sort of micro pellets from 2 to 6 mil. Then what I want my hook bait to do is mimic exactly what I'm putting in. Because as much as having my hook bait as the cherry on top of the cake, for the most part, when I'm barbel fishing, is how I want it. When it's really, really tough like this, and they're literally preoccupied on small baits. Oh, I've got a bait stop stuck in my gum somewhere. I know it's in my mouth, I can't feel it anymore. When you're getting preoccupied on maggots and 4 mil, 2 mil pellet and stuff, often a 10 mil bait is just too big. Now, over the years, I've clearly whittled loads of boilies down and pellets and all that stuff and tried to hair rig them, and they always split. So what I tend to do is I've broken my little dumbbell in half and I've hair rigged it, okay? And that's a relatively small bait, and that's generally my normal bait, to be fair. I do quite like small baits. But the way to actually whittle it down to 6 mil is hair rig it and get it on your hair nicely first, and then once it's on the hair and the boilie or the dumbbell or whatever hasn't split, then you go around and you shave it down. Okay, so the core where the hair's going through is still stable, but now I'm whittling it right down to what is probably a 6mm bait, and it's the size, look at that, look how small that is. It's the size of the pellets and the broken boilies that I'm putting in. And most importantly, if they do get preoccupied on the maggot, something that's 6mm has got an exponentially better chance, well, that's a long word for me, it's got a much better chance of getting picked up than something that's 10 or 12mm. And I know it doesn't sound an awful lot, but the difference between 6mm and 10mm is 40%, okay? And that is quite a lot. So just a little tip on how I get my tiny little bits of boilie on my hair. And to be fair, all I'm doing is I'm putting a couple of maggots, 2 or 3, on the hook at the same time. So that is my hook bait par excellence, just there. So if they're on the maggot, I've got 3 maggots on that size 12 power. And if them maggots get pulled about by silvers, which to be fair, it's that cold at the moment, even the silvers ain't having a go, then I've got that tiny little 6mm piece of boilie that could easily get sucked up. Because I think once they get preoccupied on the maggots, often they're just sort of windscreen wipering. They're hovering over the bottom. So as long as you've got a small enough bait that can be sucked up at a similar sort of ratio or power or whatever, however you want to put it, as a maggot or a small item of food that you're actually putting in, I think you're doing it the right way. So that's the hook bait. And as we spoke last time, all I'm doing is I'm tying on. I've got a couple of these Korum grippers down here, because what I try to do is once I've wound one in, I dry it off and then I just stick it in a bit of ground bait so it's nice and dry. And I'm just rotating them like some of the match boys do with their flat methods. So when it comes to the actual feeder, where's my PVA? Here it is. What I'm doing is I'm leaving a long tag, okay? And what I'm doing in here is I'm grabbing a good handful of maggots and I'm filling up that little system there. And all I'm doing over the top is I'm crumbling up a couple of boilie. Let's go 3, couple of 3. I know it annoys Ty. He hates it when people say a couple of 3 because a couple is 2. And then, where's my pellet? Then in the bait box, like the pellet, I've got some spod and PVA mix there, which is, I'm going to say 1 to 4mm. And then I've just topped it up with a couple of 4 and 6mm halibut pellets. And I've just gave it, let's be completely transparent, a little bit of this Barbel glug, just for a bit of smell. I'm very much aware that maggots is a visual bait, but also if they're sitting 30 yards below me bait, I kind of want to draw them up into it. But also knowing full well that last night most of the action came just as the sun went down, I don't think the maggots are as important after dark as they are during the daylight hours. So I want to be building a swim, even though we're only fishing till dark, like we're not actually fishing an hour into dark or 2. You've got to be off of this river, or this stretch of the river, pretty much as soon as you get into dark. So I want to try and build all the way through the day a little bit of bait, so that when the sun drops down behind the trees, just like last night, I've got a decent bed of bait there for them to actually grub around on. And to be fair, I didn't even recast last night. I just had one rod go off, wound it in, released the fish, little 3-pounder, and then once I put that rod away, I turned around and the other one was hooped over. And that's what gave me the confidence of coming back to the same swim today. Normally, I'd get itchy feet, and normally I would have buggered off somewhere else. But the fact that they were here gave me confidence to actually come back in slightly better conditions and have a go. Right, so there's this long tag, and all I'm doing is I'm cutting right the way down the middle of that long tag. Okay, should have had a Blue Peter one ready to go. So it looks like that. I'm not entirely sure what that looks like, but it looks like that. Then all I'm doing is I'm feeding one tag end through, and I'm just tying a couple of overhand granny knots. Nice and easy. 1, 2, let's do a couple of 3 because Ty hates that. 3. Like I said yesterday, you can trim that up, but it melts nice and quickly. And that's it. I've got a nice big lead On one rod I'm fishing 4 ounces, on the other rod I'm fishing 6 ounces, for the simple reason, not that I need 4, well I do need 4, but I don't need 6 necessarily to hold bottom, but I'm definitely fishing 6 on the downstream rod simply because I'm paying out a bigger bow line and it's harder to hold slightly if you're fishing downstream, okay? Because with this method, if this is melting over a course of maybe 3 or 4 foot below the lead, and my hook link is 4 foot below the lead, then what I don't want to do is for this to melt and then my lead to start moving and I'm not on that little conveyor belt of maggot, pellet and boilie. That's it. It's a method that I've been using for probably a decade now. I haven't really spoke about it that much because I really felt like it was an edge, but truth be told is when we spoke about coming down here in really difficult conditions and trying to nick some fish when quite frankly there aren't any fish being caught during the day, I thought I know something that a lot of people might not have seen before and it might help you catch a few. So anyway, that's it. The bait, how I do it. Now it's all clipped up, and that's the other thing is really important. Make sure you're not fuzzing it all over the place, because if you've got 20 parcels of bait out there, then come dusk in that 1 hour window when they start to turn on, you don't know which parcel of bait they're going to get their heads down on. If you're clipped up fishing to the same skyline marker, horizon marker every single time, then if they do start to turn on, you know you're getting a bite. Ty, you're going to need a few cutaways because that's a long piece to camera, but anyway, I hope that helped. That was on. Thanks, babe. Thanks for letting me stay out and play one more day. Because behind every good angler is a great woman. I've got to go down here again. We'll go down here again. It's grating on something badly. What is that? What is that? Wow, that was going through something then. I don't know what. There's definitely a snag in the river there because every bite they're just headed straight to it. Makes your bum go when you have to pull them through weed. It did feel weed, like, but it's so cold and so late in the year. I can't believe there's a big weed bed down there. Oof, that nearly flat rodded me then. Yeah, oh look, there's a big lump. Yeah, there is, there's lumps of weed. Big lumps of weed, just right there. It's huge. Wow, what a difference. What a difference, a bit of overcast weather. Ugh, really, really foggy here. You're not going in first time, are you? I knew you weren't. You didn't look like you was ready. You didn't look like you was anywhere near ready. Oh God. Up you come. There you go. On your back, in you go. Well, how's your luck? Well, I'm actually going to be a little bit big-headed and say that's not luck. You know, I rang the wife and told her that I had a much better chance today because of the cloud cover, and I think that's the difference. I really do think that's the difference. Yesterday, everything was against you, and when everything's against you and they don't want it, you can't put a great bait in front of them. But today, the only difference is same river, overcast conditions. I mean, I'm not going to count my chickens, but that's 2 bites in an hour. Almost bang on an hour. So my only concern is they're definitely, whatever they're getting in out there, they seem to be living in it because I'm pulling them up from something and it's very difficult to work out what it is. But from what popped off the line here, I think it's just like the remnants of a big weed bed or something. And it is about here when it starts to lift up. So art in your mouth stuff, especially when bites are at a premium. Just wash my boots off and then I'll get back. Bosh, number 2. Oh no, well, it's number 2 of the day, but number 4 of the session. They really are such cool fish. And this river can really produce some very big fish, and a lot of them. But when it's tough, it's tough. But look at that. Look how big that dorsal and tail is. No wonder it fights 10 times harder than its size. Mega. Really cool. I don't know why it makes a difference, because a bite's a bite and a cast's a cast and all that stuff, but it really does feel like you've achieved a little bit more when you have to scale right down, small hooks, small baits, and sort of try and work it out a little bit. Mega. 2 in 2 hours. No, 2 in 1 hour. Who'd have thunk it? Right, let's get back. Maybe there's a third, just maybe. It just sat like that on the bottom, ain't they? Hoovering up all them maggots. A few pellet, little bit of boilie. Skulking away. Well, I've certainly had more prolific sessions on the River Trent. I've certainly caught bigger fish as well. And truth be told, those 2 fish in the space of an hour earlier on today really buoyed me up and made me confident that we were probably going to nick at least 1 more fish before the witching hour, which is now. And I'm expecting one of those tips to bend over at any second. But the proof's in the pudding. We pitched it as a real difficult session, and how I go about these difficult sessions, I don't know how anyone else has done on the river, but the guys that I've seen in the car park certainly haven't caught anything. So I feel like just nicking a bite here and there is probably as good as we could have hoped for. I hope the film has helped you in some way, shape or form, whether it be bait, tactics, rigs, whatever. And I hope that I see you in maybe 4 or 5 minutes time with a dirty, great big double figure. I was going to say tench then. That's how hard it's been today. A big fat double figure Trent barbel in my hands. But truth be told is, I don't know. I just don't know. But we all have them. We all have tough sessions, and it feels like my last couple of sessions have been reasonably tough. But if you can winkle out a bite when bites are really hard to come by, then you're not doing anything wrong. Anyway, see you next time, or see you in 5 minutes. Yeah. It's a barbel, right? It's a big lump of weed. Is it? Oh, it is a barbel. I think it was a barbel behind a big lump of weed. It's a barbel behind a big lump of weed. Dude, we said we'd give it till 5 o'clock, didn't we? It is 2 minutes to 5. Is that a half decent fish? Is that a half decent fish? You get in the net, you bugger. A really weird, peculiar fight, because it didn't really take much line. But look, I don't know if you can see that. I said to Tyrone, I went, mate, it's freezing cold. I even took my coat off, ready for the walk back to the van. I said, we'll give it to 5 o'clock. That, ladies and gents, is why you always fish until last knockings. Well, how's your luck? I was hoping I'd be seeing you in 5 minutes. And there we go. Last knockings, was going to give it to 5 o'clock. 2 minutes to 5, goes off with the biggest fish. And it's a double. I'm not going to weigh it, but it's certainly north of 10 pounds. I want to get her back because we've got to get off the river. Days only. And I don't want to break any rules. Look at that. Wonderful. Feels a bit better when you have to try hard. You didn't fight on the battle, but you've done nothing but beat me up since. Ooh. There we go. Wonderful.